All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Bitcoin was down $5,000 at its lowest point in the last 24 hours, but has closed up into a relatively strong position. Now, this is mixed signals across the market, as you'll see in today's analysis. One side of the coin, you've got Bitcoin doing relatively well. The other side is the altcoin market not doing so well. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Now, on top of this, we also have the stock markets, which continue to grind higher in the face of many other wall of worry problems, like yesterday, the Moody's downgrade of the US economy, and also interest rates, which don't look like they are going anywhere. It looks like they're staying on pause. So I've got a lot to get through with you today, along with some data for the next 12 months, which could be good news for Bitcoin leading into the peak of this cycle. Hit the like, subscribe to the channel if you are new here. Thanks again for your support. Let's dive straight into it. Now, I've got a lot of lines to throw up on the chart. What I want to first do is show you the speed of the move that Bitcoin is doing right now compared to the previous moves that it has done into the previous highs. This generally shows you that you're coming towards the end of the entire cycle. The Bitcoin bull market has been going on since November 2022. The bull market has not just started. Now, that's a little bit of a worrying sign for people that are just getting in, but hopefully I'm sharing something with you that you don't typically hear everywhere else. The main thing that I at least see when it comes to sort of new content for people coming into the space, into crypto that is that they're all waiting for an altcoin season. I've got a chart that I want to share with you in just a moment, which might not be what all the altcoin people want to hear, but what you want to hear and what is made up into your bank account, basically the profits, are generally two different things. People want to hear the best, but at the end of the day, it's all about the trading profits here. So Bitcoin, let's throw on the lines here. And what I've got in the white lines to the upside is basically the speed of the move. Now, we've covered many times before that these moves from for the Bitcoin bull market, it's done $60,000 twice. The first $60,000 was out of the low to the March peak, and then it did another $60,000 from the low into the January peak. And so we've talked a few times about, could this be the case again? Could we see another $60,000 from the low here at 74? If that's the case, then you're looking somewhere around 134 for the peak of this cycle. And there's a bit of a general consensus when it comes to the cycle that Bitcoin's bull market goes on for about 3 years, and then it corrects for about 1 year, being the bear market. If that's the case, well, then you count forward about 34 to 36 months from the low, and that would give you sometime in Q4, maybe even late Q3 in 2025. But in a few instances, which is what I'm looking out for, is potentially something like July or August, some sort of weird time there that might catch everyone off guard. The point of that is just to be on alert, because there are some timing aspects coming towards that period. Doesn't mean it has to end there. And of course, it's always a moving target because there are no crystal balls to the game. Unfortunately, there are no guarantees when it comes to investing. That's whether it's Bitcoin, the stock market, alt, it doesn't matter. There is no exact crystal ball. We just have to watch the signs as they come out, but we can have a roadmap. We can have a game plan leading into those points. For example, if we saw a top or some top signals, like you've heard me talk about many times before, if you're new, maybe you haven't, but we saw top signals around December 2024 with the 3 bars down. That told us that the momentum was slowing down. Doesn't mean that you have to dump everything at that exact point, but it's telling you very clearly there is a very high chance that the momentum is slowing down. That showed up in December. It also showed up in March, and I talked about it in real time on the channel. So if you don't mind, hit the subscribe, maybe share the content with a friend so that they're also aware of it, because at those exact times, the majority of the market is screaming altcoin season and all sorts of bullish targets that they expect the prices to get to. So if that happens again, we get something similar like that. In terms of the speeds and the price ranges that we're looking at, let's start with the first one. I'm just going to use this range, which was 6 months from the September low to the March top, and that is this line right here. That would take you to somewhere in the mid 120s by about October 2025, so that Q4. And with each of these lines, they start to get steeper and steeper. So that's what it would look like if it repeated exactly the same for Bitcoin. Now, the reason I'm doing this is to give us a roadmap for BTC moving forward, because by the time we get to any sort of next peak, it's possible that we would only hear bullish signs that the market can't go down. It happened here, it happened here, it happened here, it happened in 2021, quite evidently at the top, it happened again here. And from my first cycle, it happened very much so in 2017. So that's the point. It's basically preparing into that. So anyway, here's the speed of it. It didn't get there. It basically ran a little bit, a couple of grand more, because of course this is the entire 60K. But in terms of timing, it ran short. So it was short by a couple of weeks, if you look at it from the January top. And it was about a month and a half, if you look at it from the December top. So I want to use both of those just to give us a couple of targets here in terms of timing. This first one, this is the low August to January. So if we extend that, then we get a price target of around the mid 130s, but also this happens to be in September, so the end of Q3. So that's the first one. And then this line here is this one here, and that comes out to be about August 2025, again with a target of around the 130s. And if we look at it from a perspective of a 70% amount in time from the previous move, because that's what happened from this move here. So this was about 180 odd days. The next one here was about 130, 140. So look at that in terms of 140 divided by 180 gives you about a 70, just a bit over a 70% move there. Now I'm looking at a 70% from the current low. That would take you to about July 2025. So if the market only went up about 70% of the time because it's dropping off, like each of these moves is getting shorter, well, then we're looking somewhere out around early to mid July with a price target of about the $120,000 range. If we took an average of this, just eyeballing it, you're probably somewhere through the middle there in the mid 120s with a time frame roughly around August, which seems to me at least a little bit strange because we've never seen any top in August. We have seen the market run up into October and then a false move in November of the previous cycle. We also saw a significant top there in April with a lower top in May. We did see a significant top in 2019 in June, and the previous cycle was in December. And the cycle before that, we go back to this one here, we saw tops in November and then another significant top here in June. So it's never come up that we've seen a top in August. Doesn't mean it can't happen. We've seen a low in August. That was in this cycle. We saw another low in September, significant low here June, significant low in March, significant low in November as well, significant low in June. So August hasn't got any data to suggest that the top would be in, but we could see a slowdown like what we've seen in the previous peak, the December top, and then another move into January, because that could lead us into sometime in September or maybe even October, because we've seen tops there before. And like what happened in March as well. You had a peak here in March, and then it ran up and just put in a slightly lower top here in April. And that then went down for 5 months and took 8 months until it could break out to a new fresh high. Same sort of thing in the previous cycle. You had a peak in April, then the market ran down, and you only had a pretty much like a false run up, a fake out move into October and November. So the momentum could slow by that point, right? You can move up and then it sort of takes some time. It tempts it again towards the end of the cycle or towards the end of the year. And then that leads to a bit of a false move. So in terms of a percentage for the gain, it might not be that much into that final peak. If we get the run out here into the top, takes some time and then runs into the end of the year, November, December. But of course that could bring on more and more eyeballs. And we have seen a little more eyeballs in the game with the exchange volume picking up. I've also noticed it on the subscribers also picking up. Some of the views have picked up as well. And you typically see that in the end stages towards a peak. Could be a few months at least, but it's not like it was 2.5 years ago where it was slim pickings for anyone looking at Bitcoin at this stage, June through to the breakout in October 2023. Back then was basically no one was looking, whereas now there's a lot of people looking. So the exchange volume may have picked up, the liquidations, they've also picked up. Nothing really extreme at this stage. We've seen the extremes around the highs and the lows of the previous peak, the all-time high, but at least there is some sort of active interest in the game again. We've also seen the crypto fear and greed index remain in greed. And in terms of timings that we've been watching, it basically played out yet again, the 4 to 5 months into a low or a significant higher low, as it was in April. That's a higher low for the market sentiment, but a lower low in terms of price. That has happened again. The time frame running out from that low to get to a breakout point, or at least another significant higher low, has been 2 months. So that 2-month area runs out in about June. So we're still on track for either of those. Now the long-term chart is also looking relatively healthy. 12 days to go until the month closes. A close above 104,000 would definitely be what the doctor ordered. Hopefully I can use that in the title somewhere. But the significance of that is that when we see a new all-time high monthly closing price, in every single instance, the price has gone higher. It doesn't mean that the next month's closing price is going to be higher. You can see November 2021, the price went higher, not by much, but it did go higher. It can give you that opportunity to start to set your stops at higher and higher prices to get out of the market. If you are interested in that, check out TIA Premium leading into the peak of the Bitcoin cycle, the real estate cycle, and of course the stock market cycles as well. A lot of courses to get through in order to plan your next attack on the markets. There's a link to this in the video description. So that's a look at the longer term cycle, and I'll cover these other data points in future videos, just looking at the swings to the upside and how this all aligns with some more of the timing that we're looking at here with the daily chart. Overall, the trend is up. There has been significant closing volume and significant strength closing above this shorter term 50% level. But as you'll see with the altcoin market, it's not the same deal over there. So starting with the USDT dominance, it might give us a bit of an insight as to why this isn't happening for the altcoins. It's still between the rock and the hard place. This is the all-time support line. That's what I'm calling it anyway. It's still grinding between these levels. Came up to test that level. Bulls want to see this thing break down, but at the moment it's still holding in this range. And that is obviously putting pressure on altcoins. And this is the total crypto market cap. Now for the total crypto market cap, it's in a slightly stronger position than the total 3. So this one includes everything: Bitcoin, ETH, stables, altcoins. Slightly stronger position for the monthly close. Definitely needs to close above 3.33. So call it $3.34 trillion for the short term. So, comparing this to where Bitcoin is at, let's bring out the 3-day swing as well. It is sitting above the 3-day swing and just below the 50%. So it's grinding around here too. It's in a stronger position. The market is really just trying to gather all of the last sell orders to then attempt to break higher and close above those levels. But for now, pretty much grinding between those exact two price points, 3.33 and 3.2. But as you'll see with the total crypto market cap minus Bitcoin, ETH, and stablecoins, this is in a much, much weaker position, still underneath those 50%, so around 700 billion. So again, this is excluding stablecoins. This one here is your TIA total crypto market cap that you can get with the TIA indicator suite. The level we need, over 700 billion, that could then relieve some of the pressure off the USDT dominance. So you'd see this also start to break down from this key support level, and that could then swing a few more bucks back into the altcoin space. And overall, with these alts, they are below many of their 50%. So many of the resistance levels that they've now created on this downtrend. So for ETH, closes above 2,800 for a nice round number. It's all these previous tops. It's the 50% extension of this current move. It's also above $2,750, which is the halfway point between the entire downtrend. That is really going to set it up for a much, much stronger move to tackle the 3K again in the mid threes and everything beyond that. In terms of the next strongest in the, say, top 10, XRP in that position now, holding above the previous tops here at 235, at least over the last few days, still beneath the 50% extension here, and also the 50% of the down range. So you can see again, it's in that weaker position when you compare it to BTC. ETH also in that weak position compared to BTC. SUI, is in a slightly stronger position here above the 50% of the downtrend, but just under the 50% of the extension. Like we've covered with BTC, it's climbing and holding above that same 50% of this range. So you go April into this peak. So that's setting up for a stronger position and easier gains to the upside. As you can see with SUI, it's just underneath that level now, the 420 and just under $4 as well. And Solana is underneath both. It's underneath the 50% of the downtrend, so that's 195, and it's underneath 172. So they're not necessarily in the most weak position, but they're not in the strongest position for when things get going. Once it breaks above those levels, that's going to be a nice easy move to the upside for a few of these major alts. And you can also see this being replicated in the Sol or in the altcoin versus the Bitcoin charts. They've come up, hit 50%, pulled back, gone back into this zone here. So they're not in the most weak position, which is down here. They're basically in a neutral position rather than being in the stronger and easier position for those gains. So you can see SUI also neutral, but slightly stronger. Weak would be back here and strong would be above this level. And XRP, it is above the 50%, but also grinding lower at the moment. It's not really putting in any highs above those previous tops against BTC. So the point of this is not to rain on anyone's parade. There are trades out there. There's long trades, there are short trades to be had, but the going is still tough, even though we're hearing about why is there an altcoin or is there going to be an altcoin season? It's a pretty popular comment that I see on X and on YouTube. People kind of waiting for this altcoin season. I think if you're waiting for an altcoin season to get rich, it's as sad as it is, it's not going to happen for you. I think you've got to be active in the market now, actively looking to position yourself for any of those longs or shorts. And if you happen to have a long-term position in BTC or another major alt and you're just looking to take profits on the way up, then just focus on that and avoid getting hung up with anything shiny getting dangled at you when it comes to any of these sorts of altcoins. Now, I don't think is the time to be just trying to pile into something and hope for the best. In terms of timing, like we've looked at, it's not the beginning of the cycle anymore. It's 2.5 years old for BTC. 2.5 years since November 2022. We're in May 2025. So that leads me over to a quick review of the stock markets as this continues to grind higher. We are in those later stages, but it seems like we're going to get a new all-time high for the S&P 500, obviously at some point, but probably sooner than many had anticipated. The cycle is still up for the stock market. How does this relate to Bitcoin? Well, we still need to see some sort of risk on environment coming in to get more money flowing back into the rest of the space. And for the S&P 500, it's continued to grind higher. We're in this zone here. And at the moment, we're grinding higher day by day, but much slower. So that might be what this is referring to. This is a fractal of 2020 when we had the COVID collapse and the bounce out. And so far, it's been relatively on point here. So you got a few of the swings, you got a couple of peaks and swings again through this period of that cycle. The same thing for the NASDAQ. It's tracking this pretty well. Nice peaks, nice troughs into some more peaks here. And in terms of, I mean, if it went for the same time frame that it did in the COVID times, dumping and then pumping into a new all-time high, that would look like sometime in January for the NASDAQ, June for the NASDAQ, and for the S&P, also June, maybe into the early part of July to test those highs. So, 5 to 6 weeks away at that point. The other thing is with the global markets, they're also pushing to new fresh highs. The Aussie market is up. Canada has hit a new all-time high. Germany has hit a new all-time high and new all-time high closing price. The Nifty, so the emerging markets of around the globe, Nifty 50 in India, also new fresh highs, taking out those December 24 tops. Japan also bouncing out of these levels pretty well. And China, looking at the Hang Seng here, also coming away and looking to tackle those next resistance levels. So out of the scare of the tariffs, most of the major world global stock markets have come back. They've bounced back. They've taken out some of those previous tops of March this year. They have put in new all-time highs in the case of Canada and Germany. And to me, that is basically all within this scope of running into the top of the 18-year cycle. So 14 years up, 4 down, The stock markets typically top after this cycle tops. This is for the US home prices, US real estate and economic cycle, which is due to top sometime 2026. It's not a peak and a collapse straight away. You probably start to see the market begin to crumble. This is US real estate and economic cycle, like 2027, 2028, before things get really heated and everyone knows about it. Later this decade, looking for sort of 28, 29, 30. In which case the stock market could keep going up into late 26 or even 2027. But the cracks are most definitely there. You've got the bonds, 10-year yields. These are also grinding higher. You can see from the low here at 3.9, ran all the way up to 4.5%, which is also putting pressure on the Fed, which at this stage, in the next 30 days, you've got another meeting here in June. Doesn't look like they're going to be cutting the interest rates. Again, doesn't look like they're going to be cutting the interest rates. They're probably not going to get a cut until, at this stage at least, September. But we saw what happened to this in 2024. There was a potential of a cut every single meeting, and it just never happened. And that is exactly what we've been talking about here on the channel. And I also put out that prediction on X at the beginning of the year, January 1st, looking at the interest rates and the possibility of the interest rates actually going up before the cycle peaks. Yes, going up. Everyone's expecting them to go down, and all the market's expecting them to go down. But there is a lot of pressure now because you're seeing the bonds also come back down. So that's basically losing interest or losing confidence. The market is losing confidence in US bonds. And the interest rates, well, they remain here, and I guess the hope is that they get cut. We're also seeing a similar trend around the globe with 10-year yields here increasing in Germany, increasing in France, increasing the UK, Spain, Italy, Japan, Australia, also going up. So all these hopes of interest rates getting cut because of the inflation at the moment, in some cases going down, with the cost of living crisis, this media headline that goes around all of our countries around the world. Yes, real estate prices are freaking high here in Australia. The yields are getting higher here. So there's going to be a bit of pressure on the central banks for each of these countries, and might not do what the market, well, at least what we want it to do, to bring down those interest rates so that it's cheaper for us to buy real estate. It could happen in the short term. Maybe you get 1 or 2 cuts here and there, like we have with Australia today. We've got another few hours to go here. Hopefully, or maybe by the time this comes out, you would have seen the interest rate announcements for Oz. And then eventually they go up and everyone starts to panic again. So in terms of the panic, bringing it full circle back to your Bitcoins and your ETHs or your altcoins, just keep watching the market here. We are leading towards those end of the stages. My view is that Bitcoin will potentially top before the stock market and possibly before the real estate and economic cycle as well. If that is a peak around late 25, or sometime 2026, maybe it tops just before or during that period. But I think the stock market is going to top after. The S&P 500 is going to top after BTC as well. Like, subscribe. I'll see you guys back here at the next video. If you found some value, let me know. Comment down below. See if you beat the bots, and I'll try and find your comment in there. Thanks again, guys. Peace out.